right.
It's like
I
exactly.
will say I'm liking the blue wall. It just kind of adds some
I agree.
depth.
Adds some color.
Yeah, changes it up a little bit. Anyways,
Makes us more approachable.
should we get started?
I think so.
All right,
Probably.
So tonight, and for the next couple weeks,
Yeah.
for the next 3 weeks,
Multiple
we're gonna be
episodes.
discussing the 7 deadly sins.
Mm-hmm.
And the 12 so-so sins. the nine really fun sins.
What a way to kick it off.
I don't know anything about those, so I'm curious.
Oh my
And why are there only
goodness.
9 fun sins?
I don't make the rules.
You got that right.
Apparently, though, as I was researching for this, anybody can make the rules,
Right.
Yeah.
right? Like, because we know that the 7 deadly sins are not in the Bible. Like, each of them are in the Bible and they're talked about, but like, there's not a list that makes them
More special than the
more
others.
special than the other ones,
Jesus
right? Like,
doesn't say stay away from these sins, but these ones especially.
yeah, it doesn't.
These 7.
They were making lists like the Greeks did. Aristotle did it. He did it with virtues. He said like each virtue had 2 endings. You know, there's a good one and a bad one, and I don't know. I couldn't follow it all.
I
It's
have heard
Aristotle.
about the 7 virtues too.
And then there was another
They're
Greek
basically just the
theologian that
opposites of the sins.
made a list of 8 of them, and they were like, one of them was like being sad over someone else's success and stuff like that, along with pride. But yeah,
Well, so that's actually where they started. So, yes, right? So, the virtues, the things that you should and shouldn't do, right? Like, that's been around forever. And Aristotle did do a bunch of, like, teachings or whatever on the right ways of doing things, and there were 2 outcomes. And then he also had, like, there's an opposite to each one. So
Like
there's
a
a
perversion.
counterbalance for each one, right? So if you have greed, there's charity or whatever, and we'll talk about that as we go on through these probably towards the end, because even still, the Catechism or the Catholicism believes that there's an opposite to the 7 deadly sins that keep you from committing them, basically, right?
Okay.
So if you're living that lifestyle, then you won't be living the lifestyle of the 7 deadly sins.
Okay.
So it's in there, but it did start back with, I mean, I wouldn't say Aristotle was probably the first person, because, I mean, everybody's had moral virtues that you're supposed to follow and you're supposed to do. But as far as a named person, he did a lot of it, yeah.
So the premise is essentially like there's a fork in the road with everything that you do, and you can either go towards the virtue or towards one of the 7 deadly sins.
Right.
Is that what you're trying to? Okay.
Yeah, kind of. So, like, yeah, so there's each thing, but
I've heard that about like giftings also. I mean, like you have the gift of mercy. If you don't follow like God, then the perversion of that is you're unmerciful. You know what I mean? Like every gift, if you don't use it, then you have a different way of going. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think people just make that way more complicated than it needs to be. Just do the right thing or don't. Those are really
Right.
the 2.
Yeah, pretty much.
You know, they look into it and try to make it complicated.
well, yeah, we should just do good things anyways.
Yeah.
These, though, were developed.
But shouldn't there be
Because
like a reward for doing good? I mean,
It's
come
what? I want an award. Say what you said. I want to know how I get one.
on. Yeah. So shouldn't there be a reward for doing good? I'll just be cheeky.
Being
ruined-
cheeky.
Heaven is the reward
Yeah.
for doing good.
Something about salvation
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Not spending eternity in fiery pit of hell.
Fiery
Yeah. Seems like a pretty good reward to me.
Yeah, I'm okay with that reward.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'd like something now sometimes. You know?
Well, like, I think maybe it's my dad. I don't remember. Somebody used to say, like, because like the world has this view of like heaven is where you're just like sitting on a cloud and you're playing a harp, and who wants to do that? It's boring. It's a whole lot better. Like, if all I ever do is just sit on a cloud and play a harp for the rest of eternity, it's better than a fiery pit of hell. I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
Yeah.
Find
I
out you're
agree.
no good at the harp.
Huh?
What if you find out you're no good at the harp? Just
That'll give you something to look forward to
Well,
for the
some
rest
guy-
of eternity.
Yeah, you have a lot of time to learn. Or you just move your cloud next to somebody who's really good at it and pretend.
And pretend. This is all speculation. We don't know if this is how it works.
I'm pretty sure we're not just going to
Pretty sure
play
that's
a
yeah.
harp.
Yeah.
the odds are
Most likely
good.
not.
But if it was, still better than a fiery pit of hell.
Agreed. I agree.
But
Well, and then there
that's
is
just
also
my
like
opinion.
there's a biblical principle, but it's also just kind of sown into the earth itself, and that is you reap what you sow. So I mean, some people say what comes around goes around, and all this stuff. Some people attribute it to karma, but I mean, you reap what you sow really does take effect in your life. So there's another motivation to do what's right.
Well, yeah, if you're doing good things, more good things are going to come your way.
Yeah.
If you do bad things, more bad things will come your way. It's not to say bad things won't come if you do good things, right? Like, we still live in a stupid world, but
Yeah, terrible stuff happens.
yeah.
If I'm gonna roll the dice, I'd rather do good and hope good.
And hope for good things, yeah. At least then you know God's got your back, right? And you're not doing something.
It's like the whole argument. Why do bad things happen to most of the time good people?
Most of the time.
So I had a friend in high school actually. So it was freshman year in high school. And I caught him one time during lunch. He's like, "Why do bad things happen to good people?" And I'm like, "Well, how do you know you're a good person, Matt?" And then he like started a joke out of that. I just gave you his name, but yeah, his name is Matt. So literally progressively throughout high school, he's like, "Why do bad things happen to sometimes good people? Why do the bad things happen to people who are occasionally good?" Oh, it was hilarious.
Good people are weak.
Yeah.
No one has
man.
the guts to say it, but you do.
No, I don't. I just knew you were going to say it.
I would never say something like that. It's terrible.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so back
We can
on
dive
topic.
in now.
Yeah. So the seven, right? So we talked about the fact that it started with Aristotle and a bunch of different people who already discussed it, but the actual 7 started out as 8. And it was presented by a Christian monk named
Evangelius.
Evagrius.
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 We'll call him Mr. E.
Ponticus.
Mr.
Mr.
E.
E. Evagrius Ponticus, or
Mystery.
from henceforth known as Mr. E.
Enigma.
The Riddler from Batman now. Never mind. We're just going to call him Evagrius.
EP.
Or Ponticus. We can call him Ponticus.
Ponticus?
That's his Ponticus.
Ponticus.
That's his last name.
Okay.
Anyways, so in the 4th century, he had written these 8 things that they were to abstain from. And he was not actually intending for it to be like a movement. He was just writing to other monks saying, hey, stay away from these things. If you don't stay away from these things, it will hinder your spiritual growth. So, like, go in an opposite direction. It was just writing to other monks. Like, it was just this, like, it wasn't a manuscript that was being published. He was just writing a letter to some other monks. And of those 8 were gluttony, lust, avarice, or extreme greed, anger, slothfulness, sadness, vainglory, and pride. So there were 8 of them, and he added sadness, basically, as the one that we don't have in there today. Which, when you look at that, it's like, don't be sad.
Don't ever be sad. Never give in. Not
Your
allowed.
dog dies and you're crying and you're just like, stop. Just quit.
Just get over it
They
already.
say, suck it
That
up.
happened yesterday.
But-
Oh my goodness.
You have to think, in the 4th century, the way that things were worded, right? So, like, you explained what sadness actually, what they were talking about earlier. Do you want to say that again?
Being sad over someone's good fortune, pretty much.
So does that tie in with envy?
So envy isn't in this list,
Oh, okay.
Oh,
right?
okay,
So
okay.
gluttony, lust, greed, anger, slothfulness, sadness, vainglory, and pride. There is no envy. And so
Okay.
it's not just like being sad because your dog died. It's being sad because someone else is getting things you want, or you're not accomplishing the things that you want. And so you kind of fall into this self-pity.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. So it's more like that, but envy isn't in this particular list. But it is funny because when I first read it, I'm like, what a jerk. I mean, all the others obviously make sense, but
Yeah.
sadness? Like,
I'm not allowed to
Just
get
suck it up.
upset.
Suck it up.
They
Part
were
of
men
life.
back then. One single tear, if like a soldier
toxic
died, you saw it.
masculinity. Sparta. We're not sad. It wasn't until the 6th century when Pope Gregory I was presented with Evagrius's list of 8. So 2
We're gonna call him
centuries.
Ponticus.
Ponticus, that's right.
Okay.
Ponticus, whatever. Anyways, the guy who did the original 8.
Understood.
So Pope Gregory the First got a hold of the letter that was written to the other things, and then he's the one that decided,
He's like, there's something here.
we're going to do something with this. Exactly. Like, this is it. A whole new thing. Which, again...
So he's a plagiarist.
Well, no. Because he took...
he changed it into 7 and added envy.
You know, my teachers never bought that when it would just change something.
But he didn't change it to 7 and add envy.
Oh, he didn't?
He changed it to 7 and replaced slothfulness with envy.
Oh,
So now sadness goes back more to the self-pity part,
Uh-huh.
and then the envy is its own thing.
I
I
see.
think they used to have prostitution on there. Wasn't that one of them he took off?
Not that I'm aware of. But I mean, I don't know. It's possible. I didn't read that, but...
That might tie into the lust part.
Oh, there you go.
That might that might have been like a subcategory.
Bullet points. That'd be a big list. You start doing that.
all of the breakdowns of each one means. I mean, like, have a whole, like, book just of the breakdown of the ones that...
Imagine the length of the scroll that would have to be on.
6
How much
months in, he's
papyrus
like,
would they have to use?
Why did I start this endeavor?
Oh my goodness.
What's funny, though, is, like we said earlier, that's not listed at all in the Bible that these are more important or worse sins, right? But without going back to the Catholic discussion, they have a really good way of taking things and making them scripture or making them
law. That's-
rules,
yeah.
things that you have to
Legalistic,
follow,
yeah.
legalistic things. Like, they do a really good job at that, and this is a prime example of that because, like we said, gluttony, greed, envy, slothfulness, pride, anger. I mean, all of this stuff is in there somewhere. Jesus talks about it. The old law talks about it. At some point, the apostles sometimes discuss them. Like, they're in there as things that we're not supposed to do, but they're not, like, the end-all of end-all sins.
Yeah.
So I was joking earlier about, like, the fun sins or something. Like, what makes them deadly? Are all sins deadly? Or, you know?
So these were, and originally they weren't called sins. They were called vices or character traits, right? And so it wasn't just like, oh, I had an instant where I was wrathful, I was angry. That's not what I was talking about so much. It's that when you give yourself over to it. And so if you give yourself over to gluttony, then you've started down this path that your soul is now forever lost. If you give yourself over to lust, you've kind of committed your soul to go to hell. If you give yourself over to envy or whatever, all of the different ones. And so it's really not just the one-off, I did this sin. It's these sins are the ones that will captivate you and then cause you to go down a direction that you can't come back from.
Unlike the sin of, like, murder and rape. You know,
Well,
like, these
anger,
ones can't
You
come
can,
back from.
but anger or wrath would fall under murder.
Murder
Or murder would fall under anger or wrath.
Yeah.
Rape
Another
would fall
bullet
under
point.
lust. Right? So,
Yeah.
like, there is a lot of the breakdown stuff. on
at
that.
what point does one person become a glutton?
You know.
When we get to the gluttony gluttony one, we can talk about that.
I mean, we
I've always
lived in one of
wondered.
the buffets and never-ending chocolate fountains.
Sitting there like your mouth's underneath
When
there.
you're sweating and you're going back, like, you know.
I got the meat sweats, but I'm still eating.
The meat sweats, yeah.
So, to go back to what you said a minute ago, it was in the form of a question, and we kind of said it even sarcastically as well. But what makes these sins so deadly? And it seems so weird to me because in James, I ended up looking it up to find out where it was, but in James it says if someone obeys all of God's laws except one, that person's guilty of breaking all of them. So why these 7?
Because these 7 encompass a lot of the other sins, right? And again, these are things that can get a hold of you, and you don't realize that they've got a hold of you until it's too late.
Okay.
So when you give over to just being an angry person all the time, and you're hateful, and you don't care about people, and now you've kind of lost yourself.
Okay.
Right? If you just become a prideful person and you just consider yourself better than everybody else, and you live that way.
Most sins come from pride, though, so could it be like
Well,
okay, with the
so
one deadly sin? Pride.
the Pope Gregory, didn't put pride in there. So he removed pride. So he put gluttony, lust, greed, anger, envy, sadness, vainglory, and then pride was its own. It was the cause of all of them, and not its own separate one. It was the all-encompassing reason for any of the 7 sins. So the way that the Catholic Church looks at it is these are sins or characteristics that once you've turned yourself over to them, there's no coming back, because they will now control your life, which is kind of true. When you really give over to greed, then every action you do in life is based off of getting more of something, right? So now my focus, and the whole point is these things are now controlling you and ruling you instead of God ruling you. So now my focus is not, I want to serve God and do right and follow after his will and do all these things. No, my focus is, I want more money, I want more property, I want more land, I want more prestige, I want more whatever, that greed now is my driving force, not God and the Holy Spirit. And so that's why they're considered the 7 deadly sins. But also, the more that we talk about this, we realize so many of just the regular sins fall into them, right? Like,
he did air quotes around that just so
for those on
the
Spotify
viewers know.
The regular ones,
Every day,
just the fun ones.
Yeah.
They fall under the 7 deadly ones.
There's only a few of those.
Only 9.
What are? Never mind. We're not.
That's not a thing. He made it
I
up.
know. I was gonna try to put him on the spot, but no. Good.
Anyways, so, and it is true, like your scripture in James, which I don't think we think about that very often, and we really have to thank Jesus for grace, because, and at some point they say, the Bible says you have to choose. You're either going to live by the law, and then you have to follow all of it, or you're going to live by the grace of Jesus, and you got to follow that. You don't get to pick and choose which ones back and forth, because if you choose the law, you have to do all of it. And if you break one, you're guilty of them all, which, could be a 10 Commandments conversation that we won't have. But yeah, I threw that out there just for you, Corey. But anyways, so in technically following that kind of mindset, though, if you break any of these at some point, but the Catholic Church doesn't look at it that way. The Catholic Church doesn't look at it as a one-off, I messed up. No, this is now the controlling force behind your existence. And that's when it becomes the deadly sin, which could be anything, though.
Yeah.
Really, right? Maybe we could stretch it to where it would fall under one of these 7, but if anything is the controlling force behind your existence that isn't God, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Whatever that list might be.
I do think it's really funny, too, though, is like, they call it the 7 deadly sins. And ultimately, if you fall into one of these, it leads to death as in eternal damnation.
Right.
But then there's also a lot of them that real life on earth here could end up like taking you to your death, to your actual death. And it's just funny how it can be both things. That's all.
What's your favorite one? I want to know.
Okay, I will say this is actually really funny. So, any movie or TV show or anything like that, and this is one big thing that I've thought about before. Any TV show or movie or anything like that has the 7 deadly sins in there, a lot of times they'll create, not any show or movie, sorry, but a lot of times they'll create characters for the 7 deadly sins. So like if you watch the superhero movie Shazam, right?
Shazam, I was gonna say, yeah.
They have characters created for all the different sins. And of course, like gluttony is a literal like bubbling ball of fat that that goes around, and lust is like this super creepy little thing. But they create these things so that we have something to blame. It's not a lot of this I feel like comes from I have something to blame my sins on. I can blame it on the idea of lust. I can blame it on the idea of gluttony rather than taking accountability for your own actions.
Right.
Which it blows my mind, honestly.
I saw there was something. I saw a picture. It was like a wheel.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to see if I can find it again. It was a wheel with a picture of each one, just depicted in some way. But they were all like very over the top, kind of like we were just saying. Like I think maybe it was in the text we sent when we were discussing this. Like they always create weird things to show this, right? Like what you're saying right now.
Where did that come from?
The cheese stick? As we're talking about gluttony. He's just like, I'm hungry right now.
Almost brought back a jerky too.
He just pulls it out.
It was in my pocket.
And he's not sharing, kind of
He is,
greedy,
yeah.
one would say.
Very kind of you.
For the Spotify listeners, he just pulled out a cheese stick out of his
String
pocket.
cheese stick.
Out of his pocket.
Committing heresy by not stringing it.
Yeah, like he's
Just going for it.
I'm not gonna take the time on the podcast to do that.
No. But anyways, the one that popped out to me on that wheel was like, it was this pig. Like for gluttony, it was this pig dressed in like fancy clothes with this giant like skewer fork, like at a table. And I'm like, that's interesting. Like, is that a ham that's on the table? Like, it was a little bit.
Cannibalism.
Very gluttonous.
But
With that being said, though, through history and especially in like medieval literature and art and theater, this was such a big topic because, or a big topic maybe isn't the right word, but much of the literature, art, and theater revolved around the seven deadly sins because of how many different ways and how weirdly they could portray them. And so they would like make big grandiose things to show or represent the seven deadly sins, and it drew big crowds to see it because people were, one, afraid of it, they were intrigued by it, but then they wanted to see what gluttony was going to be portrayed as, what envy was going to be portrayed as, because they would do these crazy things. And we know, like, the medieval times, they already had messed up brains, and so I can only imagine.
It's a miracle we made it out of those times.
It kind of is. I mean, you think about, like, the Inquisition and the things they came up with to torture people.
Yeah.
And
Pretty crazy
they
stuff.
just those same people are coming up with how to show the seven deadly sins. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't great.
I would want to see that.
here's
You
one
would
thing I am
Yeah.
incredibly grateful for. After all that, we came up with toothpaste.
Yeah, right.
Watching movies that depict people back then with these nasty baked bean looking teeth
Baked beans.
grossed me out so bad as a kid.
There's some witch.
No, just the common townsperson, David.
Yeah, right. Even the king.
I was gonna say even the royalty.
Oh man, I'm sorry, that was distracting.
All right.
Good.
So going forward, in the 13th, so Pope, so in the 4th century is when, what was his name? Ponticus.
EP.
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 In the 4th century is when Ponticus originally wrote the letter. In the 6th century is when Pope Gregory I got a hold of it and then made it part of the church theology and doctrine. In the 13th century, theologian Thomas Aquinas revised the seven. His list was gluttony, lust, avarice or greed, anger, envy, sloth, and vainglory. So he actually removed the sadness completely from it. Yeah.
A bold move on his end.
He's a charismatic theologian.
Yeah.
It's like, you can be sad. It's okay.
But he removed sadness, vainglory. Anyways, but he removed the sadness part. I was just looking through my notes here for a second. But he also held that pride was not part of it. It was the encompassing piece that caused it all.
What is the difference between pride and vainglory?
So
'Cause I was a little bit confused about that.
they changed that in the 20th century or the 19th century or whatever and combined the two because they're very hard to separate.
Yeah.
Right? So vainglory is like you think highly of yourself.
Well, if you look up the definition is pride in your accomplishments.
Yeah, there you go.
So the definition is pride. So what is the difference if the definition of vainglory is pride?
They want to make sure you got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Redundancy.
Which is probably why they eventually changed it. And today, vainglory and pride are the same thing, right? So now they don't have like pride as the all-encompassing sin. It is one of the list in the 7. So the current list is gluttony, lust, greed, anger, envy, slothfulness, and pride. Okay. So they got rid of sadness. They got rid of vainglory. And then sadness kind of mixed with envy and vainglory mixed with pride.
See, they're loosening the reins.
Do you think it's time for a rewrite? Maybe we should come up with a new list.
Maybe it's going to be 5 next time. Who knows?
Yeah. It's 5.
They'll cut it down.
Drop gluttony off there.
That's fat shaming. That is not okay.
That is not okay.
Sometimes it's nice to be slothful too. I'm just telling you, like
That's my favorite one.
sit on the couch
Sit
and
on
not
the
move.
couch, just relaxing.
So is that
Binge
different
watch a
than
show.
than
Is
we're
relax-
supposed to have a day of rest?
Is relaxing different than slothful?
Yes.
Definitely.
Okay.
Okay.
So you just have like a lazy
we'll talk
lifestyle
about
would
that
be
later.
sloth.
Slothful is
But
like,
yeah, so
you're putting in a good 19 hours. Later.
19 hours.
So as long as I hit 18, I get up.
it's like that's the cutoff, and I'm still not slothful, so it's okay.
Oh my goodness.
Back really fast because I have a little note in here that I found really interesting. So in medieval times, I was saying like their art, their literature, their theater really revolved around this, and it was quite a topic that people love to discuss and portray and do all these things. But the creator of Gilligan's Island said that each character on the island represented a different one of the sins.
Okay.
I heard something like that, but I've
Yeah.
never seen the show, so I didn't.
So yeah,
I
It
didn't
was
pay any attention to
Gilligan's.
it.
What?
What was Gilligan?
Who was Gilligan?
No, what was his?
Oh.
What was he representing?
sloth.
He wasn't very slothful.
He
was
wasn't
he?
very slothful.
No,
I
he
know.
was
I
going
mean,
around.
I think that the greed
The
and
skipper.
the
He was slothful.
the greed and the lust would be easy to, right? So like, what's his name and his wife?
I'm going to the song.
I can contribute to this conversation.
Yeah, I have no idea what they're talking about.
The millionaire. That
Yeah.
was his name.
I'm looking it up now because.
So the greed was the husband and the wife was lust?
Remember the guy with the suit?
I never
No,
watched
so-
this.
So
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
So
The villager from Minecraft.
the billionaire and his wife, Thurston Howell, yeah. So that would be obviously greed, I would think. Marianne and Ginger, that's the lust one for sure, right?
Professor would be pride, maybe?
Professor would probably be fried. Skipper might be slothful.
Maybe he's gluttony. He's a big old boy.
'Cause he's a big old boy.
He's a big old boy.
I don't know. Anyways, I didn't do the research to figure out like
They have the
which
skinniest
one.
person on the show
which
representing
Like the
gluttony. He's just
Oh, you know what?
he only
No,
weighs 90 pounds.
The
He's just
skipper's probably
constantly eating.
anger.
Yeah, he was.
He was always angry.
Wrathful.
Yeah, very
Poor
wrathful.
Gilligan always got the backhand.
Oh, poor
Off
guy.
camera.
Off camera.
Greed, lust. I don't know. Gluttony and envy and those would be the two that I'm not sure about. But anyways, it doesn't matter.
You know,
You can do
throw
some
it in the
homework.
comments.
Those who are watching and listening, you can look up
Gilligan's
Gilligan's
Island
Island
and try to label all of
and
them.
try and label all of them. Yeah, and figure it out. And comment them. Yeah.
So that we can know, because I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody's probably already figured out what the actual answer is.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
So
probably
just-
just Google it
yeah.
and then
So
you
just
did.
tell me.
Yeah, it would
So
all
just
be-
tell me down below so I don't do all that work,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, paste the link in the comments.
Very slothful on my part.
Each of them, though, with the exception of lust, which we're talking about lust today, right? Is that the one we're going to start off with?
I think so.
I don't know because we sent out two lists. Oh, but they were the same lists.
I think
right?
so.
Yeah, I think they were the same list.
One of them was better. Let's be real.
They don't know what you're talking about.
But with the exception of lust, all of them. What was I going to say? I don't remember. I got sidetracked by the lists. But they, I don't remember. We're going to move on. Lust, although lust was considered the least deadly of the seven deadly, it was the least severe.
It's
Interesting.
the easiest one to do.
Tell that
and
to
that's
Samson.
why. So
I think pride is pretty
I
easy.
said, tell that to Samson. It's the least deadly.
Well, right.
I mean, today's
Well,
world, you
and
look
then,
around,
yeah,
anyone
He got
could
his
be
eyeballs
lustful.
gouged out.
In the world we live in today, it could be pretty,
Oh, yeah.
pretty deadly.
Well, yeah, think about before they
Yeah.
learn more stuff about AIDS.
Yeah.
Like,
Like
it was pretty deadly.
syphilis or, whatever.
There's a lot of reasons why
It's a
lust can be
Christian
deadly.
podcast. Let's not trash talk into this. Someone's probably eating. You're upset with
Watching this with their family.
Lust was considered the least severe of the 7 because sexual desire. This is what's funny. Okay, so like in everything that men and not just like male gender, but just people, mankind does, is we're really good at like setting rules and then making loopholes and
Workarounds.
exceptions
And,
for
yeah,
them,
Scapegoats. And
right?
Yeah.
So lust was considered the least severe because sexual desire is something we share with the animals. It's like just a part of being alive. And then fleshly sins were not as bad as spiritual sins.
Okay.
Right. So it's considered a fleshly sin, and it's just like in your genetic makeup to do that. And so it's bad.
You could
but it's
definitely
not
argue
the
that about
worst.
greed. Also, have you ever
And
seen
gluttony.
Have you ever seen animals fight over food?
Yeah.
It's hilarious. I'm not gonna lie, but they
Take a
go
hungry
at it.
belly
For their
cats and-
survival,
They
though.
go at it.
But then the other thing with the lust too, like there are only, I want to say there's only one, but there might be more than one animal that actually,
Dolphins. That's it.
yeah, right, for any reason other than to reproduce.
Well, but that's why.
Dolphins like rape.
So, and that's why lust is what?
What?
Christian podcast.
They do. They do. They're dirty.
they're dirty. So I'm
Watch a
gonna continue
documentary.
though, because I think you're gonna, I think you're gonna tie it back to like we're animals, so we do it too essentially. But animals don't feel emotion about that. I mean, you can watch Lion King as much as you want. Mufasa was with all of those females.
Right.
It wasn't like he just had one that was his wife and then he, had a bunch of concubines. There was no emotion attached to who he was reproducing with. We have emotion attached
I
to this
love that
action.
movie.
Sorry to ruin it for you,
Why
but
did you do that to me?
it's not like when him and Nala were in the forest and
Okay,
they were singing "Can You Feel the Love
Oh, I
Tonight?"
was gonna say Mufasa wasn't with Nala. That's a
No,
little
no,
bit
no.
weird.
Wait, did I say Mufasa?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot, Simba.
He would have
Whoopsies.
been, though.
He would have been. Had he not died, he would have been. And who's to say that Scar wasn't?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness,
Well, true actually. And I
It's-
think in like
yeah.
Lion King 2 or 3, doesn't Scar have a kid?
He does have a kid.
guys!
Yeah. So.
I love this movie.
But
Stop
it was okay, never mind. I was going to go on this whole tangent about
No,
Lion
let's
King.
not do that, please.
I think I already did.
You kind of did.
Yeah. But anyway, it's different.
Well, it's much different.
Yeah.
Much different, but that's why. So, according to the belief around the 7 deadly sins, is lust is one of them because sex, and it's actually the most broad as well because it covers so many different things
Covers your
that
thoughts.
we're not going to talk about
Yeah.
on the podcast. I mean, it's truth, but I'm not going to say it.
Yeah.
But anyways, it covers anything that has to do with sex,
Mm-hmm.
anything. And so it's very broad, but it all revolves around that. But I put a quote in here. The Catechism defines lust as a disordered desire for inordinate enjoyment of sexual pleasure. So according to the belief around this is sex is meant for 2 things and 2 things only. To consummate a marriage, so where 2 people become one, and then to procreate. It's not for pleasure. And when you find pleasure in it, you have now given yourself over to lust. And so, which is why the Catholics originally, and I don't know where they stand on it right now, I also put in here that it's the one sin that public opinion within the Catholic Church has kind of gone back and forth on. Because,
Like, if you find pleasure in a cheeseburger, you're gluttonous.
well, no, that's different.
It's the
see?
same thing.
It's different because it's a cheeseburger. And I want one right now, I think, now that you mention it. But Right, because like originally the Catholic Church was like heterosexual relationship is the only way to go, and then they kind of went back and forth on that, which technically, according to the original belief around this, is anything other than heterosexual was way wrong, right? So that's kind of gone back and forth. Also, the reason why birth control wasn't allowed was because you weren't having sex for pleasure, you were having sex to procreate, period. And as soon as you gave over to just doing it for pleasure, now you're giving yourself over to that lust, and now it's going to control your thoughts, and it's going to be a driving force behind what you do instead of God being a driving force behind what you do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's funny they tried to control the only sin they couldn't partake of, like couldn't get married, and priests and all that.
Priests
Can't get married.
So they want everybody else to just be miserable.
Ever.
If I ever hear you groan while you're eating a cheeseburger, done.
This is so good. Nope, no more cheeseburgers for you, David.
You're gonna burn.
Lentils is all you get. What is a lentil?
It's a bean.
A bean, okay.
No salt.
No salt. Just flavorless rice.
Quinoa.
Quinoa. Ugh. I don't like quinoa.
It's not bad.
It's not good. It's not bad, but it's not good.
If you have it with the right thing, it's less not bad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we should have eaten before we came here.
Yeah, we're talking about it a lot.
I'm hungry now.
I did have like 6 cheeseburgers.
Loaded up.
But anyways, so they really believed that once you found pleasure in sex, it would cause you to start going down a path where you would have rape, or you would start fantasizing, and then in your mind you would start doing a lot of things that you're not supposed to be doing.
I think the opposite's true. If you withhold from that, then you probably have more thoughts.
Probably. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know. But their way of thinking was no pleasure, just procreation, period. If you like it, you're most likely going to hell. Which is why it's even on the list in the first place. And so, but it did, like...
It doesn't make any sense. Why? Why
as we
would
go
God...
as we go through all of these, they're not going to make sense.
I got stuff I can't say.
Oh my goodness.
The more I think about it, the more it irks me.
Irks.
Irks. Is that a U or an I? I think it is. Is it an
I
I?
think it's an
Okay.
I, yeah.
It irks me. It irks me.
Irks.
Um,
I didn't make the list.
I know you didn't make the list. I'm not mad at you.
But, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I can understand, though, like originally when you go all the way back to Pontius, Ponticus, whatever.
EP.
Oh, you really missed on that one.
Podius.
Harmonious.
Potent potables.
When you go back to that, his whole thing, like, I don't think any of it, and most things I don't think ever start out crazy. Right? Like, his goal was like, I want to just devote my entire life to God. So these are the things that I need to, like, really stay away from, and less being in there so that I can just focus on God. And even Paul says at one point, like, it's better that nobody gets married, because if you get married, you can't do the will of God the way that maybe you're supposed to be doing the will of God, because you have to share your time with your wife. You just have to. He's like, so if you're going to be a minister, be single. If you can't control yourself,
Get married.
get married.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just neglect your wife and go do what you gotta do. It's the simplest solution.
Anyways, I was going to say some things, but I don't want to say her name on camera again and then get in trouble. Because if you remember the very first episode, I wasn't supposed to say her name, and I was just like,
We're going to throw it out there.
yeah, Sam is David's wife.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, there you go. There you go again.
Yeah.
does she watch these?
Shows as few people know that's possible.
Not because of any reason. Then she just doesn't want people to know that she's married to David.
It's true.
Oh my goodness.
Because he's neglectful by his own words. Just
I
now.
didn't say me. Just said he could.
Anyways, back to my point.
Yeah, let's move on.
Is I understand, like, his, like, I believe he kind of had the same mindset as Paul. Like, just don't go down that road. Devote your life to Christ. Focus on, and he was a monk, so he had already, like, made this decision to, like, learn the things of God and grow that way and teach people and that kind of
that
stuff.
Paul was married though.
Oh, dude, I don't know. I don't think he was. Peter was married. I don't think Paul was.
It's one thing though with
There's a
with
belief that Jesus was married too, though, so you
um,
can't believe everything you read on the internet.
EP,
That is how World War II got started.
right? What?
It's common knowledge.
World War II got started because somebody believed what they read on the internet. I read that in like a
I read that on the
Wikipedia.
internet.
Yeah.
Okay, so it has to be true. So there's one thing with EP, right? He had the original list that he made for himself. He made it for himself.
Right.
He wasn't trying to press it on other people.
No, it was
And
his
that-
personal convictions.
Exactly, and we already have another episode about that. Was it with protesting? I think we talked about it on protesting when Joshua was on here. It was his personal conviction. He just happened to write it down, right?
Yeah,
Or
and
maybe
then
he
told,
shared it to somebody.
He shared it with his other monk
I mean,
friends.
he
he was-
staked the
You know,
list,
yeah, he
though.
did not
Yeah.
stake it to the church door. No, it
No.
was just like, hey,
I'm
this
pretty
is
sure
it.
he did.
And I think that it was more like, hey, this is what I'm doing, and this is what
Yeah.
you should do. Like,
Yeah.
you won't get distracted. You'll stay on course. Like, it was just him sharing his thoughts, but it wasn't intended to become what it's become today.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the Pope got a hold of it. And I mean, I don't want to be rude.
I think they
but
called him what was his name? Greg, right?
Gregory. Yeah,
The
Pope Gregory.
Pope Gregory the Great is what I saw in one thing, and I was like, interesting. That sounds an awful lot like vain and pride. And
well, and that's what I was thinking. The same
Yeah.
thing. Though I'm like,
I said that really quiet.
the
Sorry.
Pope is like the most prideful, gluttonous, greedy.
He didn't want the title. They just kept giving it to him.
I think there's only one Pope ever to resign. He's the only one that didn't want the title.
So he goes into the town square and he's like wearing a hood and everything, and everybody's having a meeting talking about the Pope, and he's like, "Oh, Pope the Great!" and then he runs off,
That's doing a pretty good job, huh?
getting in people's ears.
Yeah. But I think, well, and I mean, I think it's also prideful in the fact that they wanted to control the entire world,
Yeah.
right? Like they really did, and they, I mean, and at one point they kind of did, right? I mean, that's why we have.
Catholicism was everywhere.
That's why we have the separation of church and state that we have today, because they were ruling everything. Truth.
Separation of church and state was for Christians to be protected from the government.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. They was
but-
talking about like church going into government. I was like, what?
No, but to keep those lines from being blurred, where you can do what you need to do, right? And so, but the Catholic Church controlled everything, and at one point, the Catholic Church was more powerful than the king, right? The king would be like, "I'm the king," and the Pope would be like, "But you can't do that,"
Yeah.
you know.
I'll have everybody burn your castle down.
Yeah, but also it's weird. It's interesting to think that the world back then had such a fear of God that even crazy stuff that the Pope would spew, they would still listen to it, so that God would not be angry at them.
Well, again, to them, the Pope essentially was their line
God.
to God. So they looked at him as God, basically. So, I mean, you start thinking about that, it gets both sad and scary at the same time. How many people were misled back then and mistaught and misguided in everything that was their life?
Yeah.
It's horrible.
So it's not a far stretch then to think that when he got a hold of this list and then decided we're all doing this now,
It's like, hey, that's not bad.
that everybody was like,
Mandate.
okay, we're doing this now.
Just like,
But
just like
These are the
COVID.
rules now.
the reason why we discuss even doing this is because people really think that these are more egregious than every other sin,
Yeah.
when they're not. And as we go through them, we'll see that they're ridiculous, and we'll talk about them and whatever. And even like the lustful part, the reasoning behind it is
Silly.
silly. I was told I was mean on the last
So you don't think any sin is
On one of the
greater than
podcasts.
another sin?
Huh?
You don't think any sin is greater than another sin?
Well,
There's the one.
there is the one.
We have
and,
the one.
And
In our own human eyes, I think, yes. But
we'll talk about that off camera.
yeah.
And then we can decide if we want to do a whole podcast about it. But that'll be a
that's
rabbit
sketchy
trail. We'll go
territory.
down, and we'll not ever get back.
It's kind of like that. Just go and
Just go.
forge ahead.
I'll leave you with this. The Bible says there is some sin unto death, and there is some sin that's not unto death.
There you go.
You can figure it
Wait. So the 7 deadly sins, is that?
They're not the sins unto death. No.
You might have had something.
Oh, maybe that's where they get it from.
Maybe.
No.
No.
Nah.
But the reason
Taking
for
a
it
peek into Taryn's mind.
is we were doing a Bible study and somebody had brought it up in our young adults group. And I may have presented the question in a way that would cause somebody to say it, like, whatever, but and trying to get some discussion going. But they brought up the 7 deadly sins. And so that's why when we were discussing, like, this would be a good topic because people really do think sometimes that these are the more serious ones. And the Catholic culture really does believe that they are the more serious ones, which again, I can kind of understand because they do encompass a lot of other sins. Like they're kind of like headings for a bunch of other things. But the reasoning behind it, like I said earlier, is it can take over your life and be the driving force behind what you do. But that could literally be anything outside of these 7. And when you look at lust, I mean, people are driven by lust. People are driven to make decisions on their daily life, on where they're going to go, on who they're going to see, on what they're going to spend their money on all of that kind of stuff, just based off of their lustful desires. And so it is obviously not good, but their reasoning behind it isn't necessarily right. Like each of these things, like we said at the beginning, the Bible talks about them, it addresses them, but it's not more, what did I say earlier, egregious. Than
I feel like the whole premise behind it, or I guess not premise, that's not what I'm looking for, but you can basically break it down to these 7 deadly sins. I feel like they're more emotions, traits, or attributes of a person. And then the actual sin is the action that takes place. It's so the 7 deadly sins, they have nothing to do with what you've done, but as humans, we are exposed to, or pre-exposed. That's not the word I'm looking for. We are. I'll go with exposed. Okay, that's not the word I'm looking for, but we are exposed to, or man, that's really not the word I'm looking for. What is the word I'm looking for?
He'll text us all tonight.
It's
like 11 o'clock at night. All of our
like,
phones are going to go off. He's like, "This is the word."
It's like without thinking about it, we're likely to fall into that.
Impulsive?
No, I can't think of the word. It's like without thinking about it, like that it's part of who we are. It's part of
determined.
It's sort of.
Getting close.
So like,
let's flesh this out.
So us as humans, we have a sinful
dictionary. We'll just
nature
start going
inside
down
of us.
through all this stuff.
So us as
It's
humans,
ingrained in you.
sort of. That's more like it. But like,
Close.
as humans, we have this sinful nature inside of us. It's a part of our being. So the 7 deadly sins, as they call it, it's just something that we could fall into through an action that we take later on. It's not necessarily the sin itself. Those 7 deadly sins aren't necessarily the sin itself. It's just, like we've talked about before already, it's the category upon which these actions fall under. What is the word I was thinking of?
I don't know. We'll post it in the comments when he hears it.
We'll edit it in.
just for us sitting
You're
here.
gonna have to cut like 4 minutes of me blabbering about not knowing the word.
Do a freeze
It's just like,
frame.
the last time you say what is the word, it just pauses and then da-da-da. And then we go back into it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so anyways, lust was the simplest one. That's why I think that we put it together with the origin. But then next podcast will be, I don't remember what the order
I can
was.
look at the list.
Yeah, what
Two
was
of
the
them.
list? We're going to do 2.
Do apologize for not having this memorized.
Was it? Look at that.
Sloth
Corey's
and
right.
wrath is next.
Slothfulness and wrath. No?
You know what? We make the rules. It's whatever we want.
It'll be one of this, or it'll be 2 of the
long is it
6
gonna
that
be
are
texted?
left.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, 2 is sloth and wrath.
Yeah, so sloth and wrath will be what we talk about next time.
Whoopsies.
Oh, never mind. We're not supposed to say it. We already
That
did
was
say
Might
it.
not be.
That was
There's
David's.
2 different
That was
lists. So
David's
it might
list.
not
Mix it
be.
up.
It might not be.
I just want to say that David's list is a 100% copy of the first list. So
Well, it's in a different order.
Hey man, can I copy your homework? Yeah, just make sure you change it a little bit so they can't tell.
saying mine
still the
got,
same.
mine got
okay.
more responses than yours.
That is true. I wasn't saying it was my list you copied, David. I wasn't saying that. I was saying a list that you copied.
You've outed yourself.
Yeah, you've outed yourself. But I will say
What
that
a fool
yours
I've
got
been.
way more responses than mine. Mine was ignored completely. You were hailed as someone we should all look up to.
I saw yours. I was like, that's stupid.
And
then
an hour
copy
later,
pasted it.
you just like copy and paste it to a new one.
Now it's good because it's an hour later.
At the time. It's all about timing.
Well, I put a lot of
I
thought into
missed-
what I post. I'm just like
Everything has its
willy-nilly
season.
throw a
Yeah,
list out.
right.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll talk about what were we talking about next time? Wrath and
Two of the six that
Yeah,
are left.
two of the six that are
Whichever
left.
two those happen to
and
be.
so we'll
Yeah.
break this down a little bit more.
Yeah.
But then we'll get into because like each of them, like gluttony is, and when we go forward through this, we have to look at it as not just I ate so much and I'm full. It's been Thanksgiving or whatever, right? It's life controlling things that are driving our existence. That's what they are. It's not just I ate too much one day or I got angry one day. It's like all of my thoughts are around this. When we talk about slothfulness, when we talk about gluttony, when we talk about wrath or greed or all these things.
Like I'm late picking up my kids because McDonald's are like 2 for $5 Big Macs.
But the McRib though.
Actually, I think it's buy one get one for $1 right now on the Big Macs.
Oh my goodness!
really?
What?
Yeah.
That's what I'm having for dinner.
Y'all
At
want to
least
head
here.
there?
At least here in Roseburg.
I'm just saying.
Well, yeah. So with the gluttony thing, just to reiterate, kind of, it's the point to where you're breaking the first commandment, and your new god is food.
Yeah.
Food becomes your god. That's
Why
what
would-
you're
why would
spending all your
Why would you
time.
make
Greed.
something that you can eat a god?
Well, see, we
Kinda
do that all the
weird.
time. We do that all the time
Why
without
would
even
you make
realizing
a golden cow your god?
Right?
You
There's
can't
literally
eat it at least.
We don't do that.
Okay,
Cow is power.
but you literally you made it.
Yeah. Why are you worshiping
created
it?
it.
You should
And then you're worshiping it.
In a sense. In a
Technically,
sense.
you're the god here. You created it. It doesn't, anyways.
Well, and then also too, we do that all the time. Not us specifically, but when people say, "Oh, my God wouldn't do that," my God is not a hateful God.
Dish.
My
I
God,
want-
you are literally
I want
creating
names.
your own God.
Truth.
You're changing who God is. He says specifically in the Bible, there's a set of rules that we have to follow. And you say, "Well, my God wouldn't do this." Well, it literally says in the Bible right there, that's how it works. So when you change who God is, when you change the action that he says he's going to take, you're creating your own God. So you're breaking the first commandment. Or second commandment, I guess. Both. Both, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Who-
of them, really.
So
All
never.
of
Who
them,
knows
really.
the exact order of the 10 Commandments?
You do?
the first
So
commandment,
it's-
the second commandment, the
It's
third.
thou shalt have no other God before
Hold on
me.
Just a second. I'm going to look this up. because
Then
I
the
Okay.
false idols, right?
Then it's the false idols.
Some about murder.
And then I'm waiting. And then it's, do you have it?
Yeah.
Okay, so no other gods before me. Then it's the idol worship. And then I think the
Those
third
two
one.
I knew, but
bearing
Okay.
false witness.
I think the third one is bear false witness.
Nope.
Or that's number 9. No, that's not. Yeah, that's number 9. No. Or
No,
maybe
number
9.
9. It is number 9.
Okay, I'll come back to number 3. I'm going to skip that.
You're good at this.
4 is the Sabbath day. 5 is honor your
What
father
was
and
3?
I'm skipping 3. I'm going to come back
Okay.
to it.
Neighbor.
5 is honor your father and mother.
The neighbor.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Honor thy neighbor or something.
Oh, I don't think so.
Honor your father and your mother. You don't
Mother's
honor
the
your
fourth
neighbor.
one. Fifth one is
Yeah, it could be neighbor.
fifth one is honor your father and mother.
Okay,
Sixth is do not
let's
kill.
Let's go back.
I
So,
skipped 3.
1 is God's, no other God before him.
Yeah.
2 is
Idol.
idols. What was 4?
4 is Sabbath day.
Okay.
5 is parents.
Yes.
6 is do not kill.
Murder.
Okay. Yeah.
Those are different.
They are different.
They are different. Manslaughter and whatnot, you know. I think 7 is adultery. 8 is stealing. 9 is do not covet.
Nope.
No? Oh, no. I said do not lie already.
Yep.
And then 10 is covet.
Yep.
And then 3 is... Oh, what's number 3?
It's a big one.
It is a big one. We misuse it a lot, but it's a big one.
Oh, take the Lord's name in vain.
Boom.
That's what the third
How
one
do
is.
you know that?
What?
Why do you know the order of them?
Because it's important. It's not as important as people put the title on it.
Really?
But
If you don't follow them, you're destined for hell.
Yeah, but why is it important
Exactly.
to know the order?
oh, the order doesn't matter. It's just I learned it in kids' church.
One
okay.
time,
Yeah.
One time, I feel like Corey whispered in my ear, "Just keep your mouth shut and eat your chili."
He did say that one time.
It was like 2 Wednesdays ago.
Oh, that's hilarious. No, I learned that in children's church.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at some point, I did.
Yeah.
But I don't remember in order at this point. Like I know all of them, but in the right order. I don't remember which number they go to.
Well, it's really funny.
But
'cause
I'm impressed.
we put this importance, almost like they put the importance on the 7 deadly sins. We put the importance on memorizing certain parts. And memorizing scripture is very, very good because it
It's
arms
important.
you.
Yeah.
It arms you for conversation, so you're prepared to defend your own beliefs, but then also you can use it to help convince other people, to help them to understand. But saying, oh, you have to memorize this one specifically because you're in children's church and this one has a song that goes to it. I'm like, what?
Well, it's easier though.
Yeah,
right? Kids
it
are
is
more
definitely
excited when they
easier.
get a song with it.
That might be the only reason why I remember the 10. There was
Because of
probably
the
a song to it.
I
And
know
then
all the books of the Bible.
I don't know all the books of the Bible.
Because there
in
was a
order.
song that went to it, and even to this day, like I'll find myself
Singing it?
like when I'm singing through the song.
Deuteronomy.
Dude, skip to 5.
I never listened to the song. I just heard it.
But in, like children's church or something, I learned a song.
Yeah.
They had all of them in order.
Yeah.
And so even still, like many years later, I know the order.
Yeah.
But I'll still find myself like as I'm flipping through the Bible, like singing the song in my head to remember which one's next to figure out where it's at.
Yeah.
I did that with the states.
I don't even know.
Nice.
I don't care about the states. Like they're all states. They're there. I don't know. An order doesn't matter.
All 53 of them.
Canada, Mexico, and whatever the
Cuba.
other one is.
Cuba.
No, Cuba's not in there.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Oh, yeah, that
that'd
one.
that'd be the one.
Whoopsies.
Canada, Mexico, and Puerto Rico.
Anyways,
Very off
real
topic.
fast. Let's go back.
Yeah, this has something to do with the 7 deadly sins.
So they believe that each of the sins has a counterbalance.
Yeah.
Right? So from lust, the counterbalance is chastity. So if in order to not give over to lust, their way of doing that is to just abstain from all sexual acts completely.
How do you control your thoughts?
Like moved to a monastery.
Yeah, which I really think, and I'm speculating here. This is conjecture in a sense. That's why priests don't get married. That's why nuns don't get married, because they're committing their life now to the work of the service of God, and so in order to abstain from anything that would lead them astray, they're just going the complete opposite.
I always
So
thought they didn't get married because of what Paul said about, abstaining from it. It's better to not, all that.
well, I think probably originally, but then I think it comes to this as well. Like, chastity is the way to not get caught up in lust.
Yeah, but see, that
But you
also created
still-
a whole lot of problems with the Catholic Church especially.
Well, yeah,
What are you talking about?
I was just gonna say we're not gonna talk about that, and then David's like, "What are you talking about?"
Bring it out here.
This
Throw
is
it out
good.
there.
This is a family-friendly podcast.
I'm not sure that it is.
We try our best to be.
Some of the things that we have
You say
said.
some pretty raunchy stuff.
Yeah,
I
Hayden.
do.
Yeah, Hayden.
My bad.
Talking about boss A with boss C. and-
I'll be better next podcast.
But anyway, so chastity would be the opposite of lust.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make any sense because
Fasting,
you don't
gluttony.
have to have
Fasting.
you don't have to have
I
sex
think that might be.
to lust after somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, like, seriously, tell me, like, 13-year-old boy is sitting in class and, like, I'm assuming, hopefully, never actually had sex, but he's still looking at that girl going, oh, she's cute.
Yeah.
And I want to kiss her or
Yeah.
whatever, like, whatever. So he's already having that mindset, even though he hasn't engaged in the act.
Yeah.
So chastity, in one sense, like, I understand, I guess, to a point where it would keep you from falling down that path. But at the same time, your mind is going to do what your mind is going to do regardless. And so,
But take captive your thoughts, Taryn.
Take 'em
well,
all.
you should. Absolutely.
You should, absolutely.
It's not the first look that gets you. It's the second. Billy Graham said that.
It's true.
Fair.
It's true. It's true.
But still, going to one extreme doesn't fix the other extreme.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you got to work it out. And
It might help.
self-control isn't in
big
any
one.
of this stuff, right? Like,
fruit of the
there is
spirit,
no
though, isn't it?
self-control.
Fruit of the Spirit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not like,
That's the last one.
It's the last fruit of the spirit. It's the least.
or they save the best for last.
Oh, okay, that could be true too.
Yeah, see.
Pretty sure
But
they're all
anyway,
equal.
self-control is something that we're supposed to have.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be like, I'm not going to be a glutton, so I'm only going to eat rice and beans because I don't want to,
Yeah, but then you get very prideful of that fact. I'm not a glutton.
In front of everybody at the
like
buffet.
a vegan. I don't eat meat.
Throw the plate down and none for me.
I had rice this morning.
Did you?
No.
Oh.
I'll just have an old piece of toast. That'll be good.
Water and
Lentils.
lentils. What is it? What did the 3 Hebrew children eat?
There were only 3 of them?
They ate
There were a little bit more than 3.
vegetables, steamed vegetables, but it's called something specific.
Collard greens.
It's called, starts with a P. Starts with a P.
I
Anyways,
think that was.
steamed vegetables and water. That's all we're eating.
Mustard greens.
Which
All
are
right.
delicious, but off point.
We're way off now.
Yeah.
Anyway, so with each of these, there is an opposite, and for lust, their counterbalance is to say, well, we'll practice chastity forever
Yeah.
and not do that. So, but and I feel like as we go through them, all of the counterbalances will just be just as extreme as the actual sin.
Yeah.
Which I guess it has to be extreme to be a counterbalance, right? Like it has to be equally as absurd as the thing that they're actually talking about. So
Chastity is absurd.
well,
Heard it here.
So I want
one thing
to.
for
did
sure that
say it.
David is good at is
did say it.
twisting my words.
So I want to say we do laugh a lot on this podcast, but there is actually some good information in here as well.
yeah.
But you'll have a good time while you're watching.
Sometimes you got to go through the weeds.
Those weeds that you're gonna steam and then eat later
Because you're not a glutton.
because you're not a glutton.
Tried it once. Glad he wasn't. For me.
Gluttony wasn't for you. All right,
my
that's all I
goodness.
got. I'm out of stuff to say.
I think that we're set up pretty well for the next couple episodes.
I think that we are. Yeah. So we'll
Yeah.
go through.
Especially if we go off on all these little tangents. We'll just spend all of our time. It'll be great.
It'll be great.
It'll be great.
I concur.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, subscribe, and
Leave a comment.
click on the old notification bell.
Or don't.
Ding.
Ding.
Yeah. or don't.
really care.
I don't care. I'm not going to tell you what to do.
Be a rebel.
Actually, I would prefer that you didn't click the notification bell.
Why would you prefer that?
Reverse
Reverse
psychology.
psychology.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
respect
Thank
the
you.
person who hits like.
There we go.
Jeez, kid. All right. That's the end for us, right? That's the end.
Yep. Sign our.
Cut.
Cut.
Thank you. Love you. Good night.
Cut it out.
Good night and good luck.